Hello guys, it's John from The Body Engineers, and today I'm going to talk to you about the 11 principles that you should 100% follow if you want to avoid getting injured in the gym and enhance the longevity of your joints. So I'm going to go through these principles really quickly, and in some future videos I'm going to go through them in more depth. So the first principle is that you should avoid extreme ranges of motion. So what I mean by that is to make sure that you don't go into an extreme range for your shoulder, for example. So an extreme range is when you're in full flexion or full extension, full abduction, for example. These are all places which are going to be more stressful for your body, and then that may enhance your chances of getting injured because there's more things that you can do wrong in those positions. The second principle is to make sure that you're using a slow tempo. Because when you do this, you're actually using the muscle throughout a greater range, so you're going to actually get better results, you're going to get more muscle activation, and you're going to feel things more. You're going to have more feedback to your body, so that then you can sort of sense when things don't quite feel right, and then it's actually going to cause less stress on your joints because you've got less acceleration and deacceleration within the tendons of your joints. The third principle is to always warm up with specificity. So what I mean by that is to make sure that you're doing a warm-up which is specific to the exercise you're going to be doing during the workout. So if you're doing a bench press, for example, you would want to warm up at a very light weight with the bench press, take inventory of how it feels before actually progressing and going on to something else. If you're just doing a random workout on a treadmill, you're still going to have to do that warm-up, so you might as well just be more efficient and actually get straight on with the warm-up on the bench press. The fourth principle is to make sure that you're focusing on one thing at a time. So quite often I see in the gym, people are trying to, balance on a Swiss ball whilst doing a chest press. And that doesn't really make sense because you're going to do a bad job of training the chest, and you're not going to do a very good job of training the stability muscles as well. So it's always better to separate the two because then you can focus on one thing at a time. Just the same thing when you're multitasking at work. You're not going to do as good a job as if you just focused on that one thing and got it done and then moved on to the next thing. The fifth principle is to always make sure you're in control, and this goes into the previous principle as well. So you want to make sure that you can stop the weight and you could pause at any point because if you allow the weight to dominate you, so for example when you're doing a bench press and you allow the weight to push you into a position which you normally wouldn't be able to get into without the weight, then that's going to cause problems and you're going to develop issues in the future. The sixth principle is to make sure that you're as mindful as possible when you're doing the exercise. So you're really taking inventory inside of your body the whole time to see how it feels and to make sure you don't feel any kind of like joint stuff that's probably not muscle related, that's something else. If you've got bone on bone, or like you feel something actually deep in the joint which just doesn't feel quite right, then you should stop. And if you're not mindful of that, if you're just focusing too much on doing the reps and the sets, then you're going to miss those early warning signs, and then it's going to be too late, and then you're going to develop problems. The seventh principle is to make sure that you're recovering in between workouts. So if you do a workout for your back, you want to make sure that you've fully recovered with the back and the muscles are feeling good again, they're not sore, you don't have any joint soreness anywhere before moving on to the next workout. And this is really important, particularly if you've got some slight niggles that you want to get rid of. The eighth principle is to make sure you're doing balanced workouts. So what I mean by that is not training too much of one muscle and not enough of the other, because then you can develop imbalances, and then the muscles and the joints get out of alignment, and then you start to get unwanted stress and wear and tear in the joints. So making sure that you're doing a balanced workout throughout the whole body is really going to help to ensure that you stay as optimized as possible for as long as possible. The ninth principle is to make sure that you know at least a little bit of anatomy, ideally quite a significant amount of anatomy, so that you can really, it enables you to be able to target and focus on specific muscles more than if you didn't really know where muscles attach and what you're actually trying to train. So it really helps Otherwise, you're kind of like shooting at blindfolded at a target otherwise. So you really want to make sure that you know what you're targeting and where they attach so that you can sort of bring the 2 points together to activate that muscle as best as possible. This then really comes into the 10th principle, which is to know how to activate a muscle in the best way possible. And this just really means just knowing a couple of simple principles, which I'll share in a future video. And if you know these principles and follow them, it's going to really help to make your workouts a lot more efficient and to make them more successful, essentially. The last principle is to make sure that you're avoiding pain at all costs. Now, this does sound like an obvious principle, and oftentimes it's not really, people don't focus on this aspect. And if you're ignoring the early warning signs, then eventually things are just going to get worse and worse, and then you won't be able to train anymore. So you really want to make sure that you avoid these little niggles and pains and like things that don't quite feel right. Immediately stop and then change your workout, go on to something else. And so those are the 11 principles, and I'm going to go through them each individually in some future videos.
The Body Engineers.